As with any vocational context, hospitality and catering presents learners with a range of situations that involve maths.
So that shows how much we took last week.
Here, Jane and Abby, a maths and a vocational practitioner, talk about some of the maths needs they have identified in working together.
I think estimating is something that comes up all the time for both of us as well, in practical sessions and in sort of when they're sitting down and doing an exam, because they have to know roughly, if they're doing a percentage, they have to know roughly whereabouts their answer's going to be. Just like at the tills, they have to know roughly how much the bill's going to cost so that they don't say some random number like £400.
Because we roughly know about how much coffee is and stuff like that, you roughly work it out in your head, and then if the till was like £5 more, then you sort of work out in your brain, wait a minute, that's not right, I better recheck it just to make sure everything's okay and stuff like that. So estimating how much money stuff's going to cost really helps.
It's teaching them to recognise really those sort of problems, isn't it?
Yeah, and recognise numbers, I think, is the important thing. Being able to recognise a large number that probably they won't expect to see a large number coming up on the till, because I mean our prices, the way our prices structure works, it is very reasonable.
Here, a learner tells us something about her use of measurements.
I use measurements quite a lot actually. Like you have to know your like different limits and stuff on the alcohol and the fruit juices and like the different measurements of alcohol.
Measurement is one of those areas where the maths encountered in the vocational context sometimes seems different to that encountered in the classroom. Jane and Abby talk about how, in working together, they can help learners apply their understanding of maths to different situations.
And I think certainly behind the bar, because we're working in sort of fluid ounces and mils, and then we're talking about pints.
Yeah.
And so we're having to convert, because the industry doesn't change, but then they'll have a bottle of beer and it'll be 750. But then it's sort of like, well, that's not a pint. So, but they have to be able to measure. So they have to know legislation as well. So it's really important for them to actually get the measurements right. But in the same breath, they still have to be able to convert them.
In maths lessons, we talk about what metric is and what imperial is. They sort of ask loads of interesting questions like, well, why did it change? And it's working out which are the old ones, which are the new ones. And they ask why some measurements are still in imperial, like pints, and you weigh yourself in pounds and ounces and that kind of thing. And it's sort of enhanced because they're doing it on a day-to-day basis. They're working with those measurements in the restaurant, and it's sort of supported by what Jane does in catering sessions.
In addition to the restaurant outlet, there is a shop where prices are written on the board each day.
On the board, it's making sure that they've got the pound sign in and the decimal points in the right place. So that's something that we have to check on a regular basis, and that's where Abby gives them support in the classroom as how to write numbers. I think is really important, especially in this industry. It's important that we get it right, otherwise we're breaking the law.
So if they're adding £1.20 to 40p on a calculator, they need to remember to put the decimal point in with the 40p, so it would be 1.20 plus 0.40 to give them the answer in pounds.
Working with cash and denominations presents another situation where learners may encounter differences between the classroom and the vocational context. For instance, when dealing with the equipment that can be found in the work environment.
And that causes confusion with us, because our till up in the shop, it's difficult for them because they can't put the point in, they can't use the decimal point, they have to put it in as like a whole number. So often, so if they're putting 40 pence in, they have to not put the point in, so they just have to put 4 zeros. I have to explain to them that that's the way the till automatically decides where the decimal point's going to go, and they don't. That's taken away from them. It's a bit frustrating sometimes for them, knowing that they have to put it in slightly different to the way they're actually taught in the classroom.
While While working with vocational practitioners to help learners apply maths in practical settings, Abby is also able to make use of those contexts to enrich her own teaching.
I'm always going in the kitchen and borrowing the scales, so because sometimes they don't know. Like if you say what's a gram, they're like, it's hard for them to think of something that would actually weigh a gram or a kilogram or something. And they always come up with stuff from the kitchen. They're like, oh, would that be a bag of flour, or would that be this, or something? It's always something practical in real life. And if they have that in their head, it helps them remember that a gram is actually really small and a kilogram, that's about a bag of flour. A lot of the maths that they have to do in functional skills is about problem solving, really. And one of the things that Jane taught me that she does in her lessons is, because I suppose in the kitchen, if you're in a situation where for some reason the equipment's failed or something like that, and you have to work out how to find half a chunk of butter, I don't know if you want to explain that.
Well, yes, the majority of people would automatically cut that butter straight down the sort of middle of the butter, because that's how people would estimate something. But the most accurate way of estimating a block of butter would be to cut it diagonally across, so then you get two equal. It's more likely to be more equal than if you cut it down the middle. Yeah, that was a chef's tip for me, and that's one thing I've always remembered. It's something that we use on a regular basis, because when we're doing the butter for service, I'm trying to get the slices correctly, and they cut them into triangles, so then they're more accurate than having them in big slabs.